Hello and welcome to today's session, Integrating AmeriCorps Members into Your Organization. We're here to talk about how your soon-to-be members and your current members can be connected with people and resources within your organization. We all want to see success, and one of the ways to help your members succeed is to support them in feeling like they are truly part of and included in the organization. My name is Eric Powell, and I'm an AmeriCorps VISTA training specialist here at AmeriCorps headquarters. I served as a member and a leader, and then as a VISTA program coordinator for a VISTA project prior to joining the VISTA headquarters team. I'm very, very happy to be with you today and excited to hear all of the information that you bring about how to integrate your members into your organization. And I will also be hosting today's session, as well as facilitating the chat activities and the live Q&A at the end of the session. A brief look at our agenda shows that we're going to start out with, what do we mean by integration? Let's explain it and talk about it. We're going to talk about the importance of connecting. Many of you in the pre-session chat already talked about why it's so important to feel welcome and part of a team. So we'll briefly highlight that. We'll then segue in a large group to talk about how do you get started? Some of you may have ideas, but whether you're new or you've been doing this for years, what do you do to get started with integrating your members? Then we'll break out into small groups. You'll have a chance to really connect with small numbers of people to talk about a couple of questions. And then before we wrap up, we'll offer a couple of recommendations and resources for you. And then we'll ask you to complete a short evaluation, and we'll take time to answer a couple of your questions. So let's start with what we mean by integration. The term integrating or integration can certainly have different meanings and contexts for many of us, especially when we look at the news, around the world, and even in our own lives. So let's begin with talking about how we're using the term specifically for this session on helping your AmeriCorps VISTA members feel connected and integrated. In this specific context of integrating AmeriCorps members, what we mean is that integrating is helping the members feel like they are part of the organization, not as staff members, but as an important part of the team. We mean being inclusive in words and actions. As you talk about AmeriCorps and the VISTA program, give credit for all of the work your member did on their own or with a group, and bringing the member to meetings and events to really introduce them to the organization. And we also mean creating and fostering various types of connections. Those could be based on similar work and tasks. They could be connections based on personalities, interests, or other. And there are a few ways to think about integrating members as we think about how to get started. One way is forming partnerships with other staff members and people in the organization who could serve as a mentor to your member. Maybe they have resources to help your member achieve their tasks, or you might even think of other things that come up. Another way is joining with other organizational teams or groups that can further connect your member to new people, creative ideas, and the ability to network and leverage human and physical resources. Creating a friendly environment among organizational stakeholders, which I'm sure and I hope that you already do, to welcome your member and really be excited for what they will be doing and that they're serving at your site. And also helping your member feel like they fit into and belong to the organization. Many of you talked about inclusion and being asked what you want as what makes you feel part of a team. Think about that because your members probably feel similar. Your goal is to integrate and not isolate your member. So no matter how many members you have, it's essential to assist them in feeling like part of the organizational family. We know that the saying, we've all heard it, hindsight is 20/20. And I'm sure you know how important it is to connect your members to people and resources, just like you were connected to people and resources when you started at your organization. However, we briefly mention this because it can be very easy to overlook the thought process assisting with those connections, especially when you as the supervisor may have been at your organization for a decent period of time, but each member is new and only serves for 1 year. So time, when it comes to integrating them, is of the essence. And in thinking about making those connections between your AmeriCorps members and staff at the organization, it is important to remember that VISTA members are not staff members of, nor employed by, AmeriCorps, your organization, or your VISTA project. As you know, they're national service participants serving as part of a federal program through AmeriCorps and the VISTA program placed at your organization. They are also not interns, administrative assistants, or part of a fellowship. Sometimes we've had plenty of people use those terms and say, oh, it's easier to describe them as an intern, but that's not what they are. So we want to make sure that you are accurate in explaining that they are AmeriCorps VISTA members. And this all relates to integration because we want to talk about that VISTA members must follow the rules of the VISTA program as outlined in the Terms and Conditions course and the VISTA member handbook. And they also need to follow the rules of your organization. They must focus their efforts on what is in their VISTA assignment description, or VAD. As they're getting to know the organization, they probably will express interest in other things, but they do have to make sure that they keep their work focused on capacity building activities that are outlined in the VAD. And then often, members sign up to serve because they see a need, they want to be included in part of the solution to make a positive difference in the community. As we said earlier, VISTA members serve for 1 year, so that gives them 365 opportunities to build connections, build capacity, and build their own knowledge and skills. The better connected the member is to their service and the organization, likely the better your chances for their retention in service. So let's take a look at the road ahead and the wonderful adventures that await. As we give you 7 questions, some of them are relatively high level and some are specific, to consider in your planning to connect your members and the organization. And we'll go over these pretty quickly. One question to think about is, how well does your member know the organization? Maybe all they know is what they've seen on the website, or maybe they've been volunteering with the organization for years. Likely they don't know all the aspects of the organization that could help them in the role as an AmeriCorps VISTA member. This is why it's important in your role as supervisor to help them know this in advance, because it can make your role more efficient in reminding them of the human and physical resources while also integrating them in other ways. Another question, does the member understand the VISTA project structure? As you know, the VISTA program has single site, multi-site, and intermediary VISTA projects. Oftentimes, the multi-site and intermediary projects have additional structural layers that can make it complicated for the member to understand. Sometimes, they don't even know who their supervisor is, which of course is not the ideal situation. So you as the supervisor need a strong understanding of your project because in order for you to show your member the ropes and make them feel part of the organization, you will need to explain it to them and show them how the organization is structured. Third question, do you know if the member has been in a full-time professional work environment? You may think this question doesn't seem that critical, but when you think about it, there's people that easily adjust to a full-time schedule, and others, especially someone who may be right out of college or may have taken a break in their work experience, they may be a little bit more challenged and struggling physically and mentally getting used to a full-time workload. So regardless of the answer to this question, as you think about integrating and making sure that your member is integrated in the organization, you should still emphasize to them the requirement of full-time service and do as much as you can to acclimate them to what a full-time pace looks like at your organization. Since you'll be meeting with them on a regular basis, especially during their first week of service, ask them about their experience and if there's anything they need to support them in this full-time endeavor. Give them an example if you have a previous VISTA of what the previous VISTA did. This is where it can really help to also try to establish a mentor if there is someone at the organization who can serve in that capacity, or even another staff member to really help get to know the member and integrate them into their tasks and what the organization's full-time workload is like. Question number 4. What is the most effective way of helping the member connect with peers? Most likely you have an answer to this question, and your member may also have other ideas. So do what you can to help your member connect with the organization, while you also empower your member to be proactive and initiate connections on their own. Encourage them to talk to you about how they develop working relationships and what might be the most helpful situation for them to build new connections. Question number 5. Does the member seem to be more introverted or extroverted? And there's a lot of questions that come up. We're only giving you 7 here, but we ask this question because whether the member gets their energy from being alone or surrounded by people, it's good for you to know because you want to help the member feel comfortable and respected. Certainly, it's okay when you're planning meetings and gatherings with other organizational staff members. It's okay to respectfully challenge them a little bit to try to branch out, but you want to try to find a balance that may involve some group introductions, some one-on-one conversations, and maybe even some alone time where they can do a little research on their own and really come back together. So for example, if your member is significantly more introverted, you probably don't want to only organize large group gatherings and meetings for the member. That might be too overwhelming. So again, you want to find the balance and you really want to assist your member as much as you can in this process. Another question is the member proactive in starting things on their own, or are they reactive and wait until they are given specific action? We ask this question simply because if they're proactive, they probably need very little information and they can start hitting the ground running, setting up meetings with staff and introducing themselves to individuals, although you still want to assist them a little bit. But if they are more reactive and they wait until they're told to do something, remember that it's not your responsibility to do everything for them. However, you do want to work with them to create a template for conversations or give them some kind of a guide so that you can assist them in this process. And then from there, they can be a little bit more encouraged and proactive to start making connections on their own. And the final question we ask you here is, how can you best engage stakeholders of the organization to understand the VISTA program, the role of the VISTA member, and how it all fits together? And I'm sure some of you are probably laughing and smiling right now because you're thinking, this is the age-old question we've been trying to ask for years, or answer for years, excuse me. Well, this process of integrating the member goes 2 ways. You want the member to feel connected to the organization's mission, structure, and people. But you also want staff, volunteers, and board members to know that there's a VISTA member at the site, and you want them to be connected to who the VISTA member is. Both parties ideally would express an interest in getting to know the other and supporting them in their best effort. So we ask this question simply because it's a way for you to think about the double-sided coin of how can you support the member integrating with the organization and how you can support organization to integrate with the member. So with all of that, how do you get started? Every organization and every VISTA project probably chooses their own route to success, but it's important to consider certain elements in connecting your member to the organization. We know that the member can obviously go online, look on hard copy, and read the organization's mission, vision, etc. And they should, it's important to know. But as their supervisor, you will also want to go into a little bit more detail and explain not only what the mission means and offer more context to it, but explain how it relates to their VISTA assignment. This helps the member understand more of what goes on in a larger context, especially as you try and relate aspects of the mission to the VAD that the member has. Aligning the VISTA member's activities with what the organization is trying to do helps create connections. When you have your meeting with the member, especially early on in their service, you also want to talk about the goals of the organization, at least in terms of what it hopes to accomplish and how. Don't spend hours on this, but it's certainly a foundation that can help the member feel like they fit into the larger picture. And we've had a lot of members talk about wanting to fit into the larger picture of the organization and AmeriCorps in general. And along with goals, show the member the strategic plan or other plans that outline goals, objectives, and strategies to accomplish them. We know that although the VISTA position is important, there's also other things going on at the organization. And so you can help explain how the VISTA position will really make a difference in the organization. The member certainly wants to know how their service will make a positive impact on a larger scale. Not every member will immediately see or understand the need for the VISTA project. So it really is in your best interest, to the extent possible, to give more substantial information and foundation about the purpose of the VISTA project. Because if the VISTA member doesn't understand the project, they're probably more likely to feel disconnected from the organization in general. This is why we really encourage you to outline the overall plan for the VISTA project, and even consider showing your members a 3-year project plan. Help them to see why the organization applied for the VISTA project and how they fit in. This all fits into integration. Whether your VISTA project is a single site, multi-site, or intermediary, offer clear details about its structure, including an organizational chart, chain of command, communication protocols, etc. Having heard from members who serve with projects at organizations that have multiple layers, similar to one that I served at years ago, it can be very confusing to explain that they are an AmeriCorps member, serving with the VISTA program, placed at organization X, and located at site Y. There's 4 or 5, 6 layers sometimes, so the more that you can clearly help your member by giving them words they can use to describe what they do and how they are part of the organization, the better. They will certainly need to know things like points of contact, the contact information for the direct supervisor, because sometimes they don't have that. They also need to know if they have a secondary supervisor, if they have a VISTA leader, and whoever else they may regularly or occasionally need to contact. A major part of helping someone integrate is connecting them to human resources that are needed as well as desired. So we want you to do as much as you can to make this a priority in your work. I'm going to quickly mention a minute intro, and many of you might have heard this. It's exactly that, a minute intro. It's a quick way for the member to explain who they are as a VISTA member and what they do. It's a brief introduction that they can use when meeting organizational staff, volunteers, community members, etc. In their minute intro, it's very important that they identify themselves as an AmeriCorps member serving with the VISTA program. As we said before, we don't want them to call themselves an intern or a volunteer or administrative assistant. The more they talk about AmeriCorps and VISTA, the more people have an opportunity to learn about them and the program. They and you want to avoid using words, as we said before, such as intern, volunteer, assistant. As they get to know people in the organization, encourage them to also have a longer introduction, because there may be individuals who want to hear more details about their service, why they applied to serve, and their specific activities. You as the supervisor will also want to have some version of a minute intro for the same purpose of quickly explaining to individuals what VISTA is and what your members do. And I'll quickly say that the minute intro is one part of the VISTA member orientation that we give to all of AmeriCorps VISTA members when they start service. So let me give you an example of what a minute intro looks like from a member and from a supervisor, so you can think about how you may want to work with your members to create an engaging way for them to find out how they can integrate into the organization in a simple introduction. So here's an example of a minute intro for a member. Hi, I'm Sam Smith. I'm an AmeriCorps member in the VISTA program serving with Happy Homes. Our organization works with low-income individuals to learn about home ownership and how they can improve the healthiness and happiness of their housing situation. My role is to create a social media presence for others to know about the organization, assist in writing grants, and to meet with and interview low-income community members to put together a database of physical and training needs in the community. I'm really passionate about this because safe and healthy housing is important to me, and I want people to be happy where they live. On a slightly different take, here's an example of a minute intro that might be used for a supervisor. Good afternoon. My name is Taylor Thompson, and I am a supervisor of AmeriCorps members serving in the VISTA program. We are based at Happy Homes, which is a nonprofit organization that works with low-income individuals to learn about home ownership and how they can improve the healthiness and happiness of their housing situation. Our AmeriCorps members engage in capacity building activities to support and grow the VISTA project, doing things such as creating a social media presence for others to know about the organization, assisting in writing grants, and meeting with and interviewing low-income community members to put together a database of physical and training needs in the community. We could not do our work as effectively or efficiently without our AmeriCorps members in the VISTA program. So in looking at those very two quick examples, you can see they're both very similar but structured based on who's giving it. And if you want more details about this minute intro and other coursework, we strongly recommend that members look at this in their first few weeks of service. And you can also look at it by going to the VISTA campus and accessing the VISTA Member Orientation Learning Path. In addition to having a minute intro, it's important to have a list of people to know, which I'm sure you probably already provide to your members when they start. When you talk with your member, provide them with at least a few people they should definitely get to know and tell them why, because sometimes it really helps them make connections when you explain why they should meet certain people, not just saying, go meet John or go meet Jill. This includes meeting people like staff. You might include the head of the organization if they're available, leaders, anyone who works in a department or area that works and relates to the member's service. For example, if the member is working on a social media project, you may want to see if you can introduce them to any communications office in your organization. If your member is recruiting volunteers, you may want to connect them to the human resources office or an outreach office so they can better get tips and recommendations to work together. Introduce them to board members, and that could include current or former board members. This might be meaningful for the member on a professional development level, as well as to get to know other people who are affiliated with the organization. And I'm sure you know, there are some board members that are more connected to and involved with the organization than others, so integrating with the VISTA member really helps connect them to the VISTA mission. You might want to introduce them to regular volunteers. That could be retirees, people who donate their time, etc. If your organization has volunteers that are involved more than on a one-time basis, your members really may find it meaningful to meet these volunteers and hear about their experience and why they're so passionate about the organization. Again, it's another way to integrate them into the organization and the culture. And you also want to introduce them to personal and professional connections. This could be anyone else in the organization who may be great at assisting the member to grow in their personal and professional goals. Connections are important to bring awareness to the organization and staff, as well as to help the member complete their VAD activities. But they are also vital for the member to communicate with individuals about growth, learning, development, and how they can succeed in their VISTA year and beyond. You know your organization well and probably can identify additional individuals who would be great connections for your member. So when you're thinking about all of this, we just ask you to give some brief thought to how you will do this, because in some cases, it may be really meaningful to introduce the member to a group of people at once, while at other times, it may make stronger difference to foster one-on-one connections. In addition to what we just spoke about in terms of staff, board members, etc., I'm going to give you a quick example. If you're in the meeting with your member and other staff, you may want to give a brief overview of AmeriCorps, VISTA, and the purpose of your project. You as the supervisor set the stage and then give your member the foundation they need to help all the people in the room understand. Prior to the meeting, you may want to work with the member and encourage them to be prepared to introduce themselves. There's nothing greater than having someone introduce themselves to really talk about who they are, why they served, why they're there, and what they're doing. It helps the organization staff and everyone put a face to a name, hear their voice, but really get to know more about the member and build connections. You also want to make yourself available to support the member by looking at their talking points. You don't have to write every word for them, but they may need some tips or suggestions. And how do they know how to tell who they are as a person, but how do they talk about what they are and how they're integrated with the organization? That's an area where you can definitely help them so that as they're talking to community partners and volunteers, they integrate both their service with the organization. And then also think about a specific takeaway or ask so that it almost gives the staff homework. Now, they probably won't like you for giving them homework, but you don't have to call it homework. You can just tell them you want them to think about some things. And this could be an example of maybe you ask them to review or look at the VISTA assignment description so they can see in detail what the VISTA member is doing. Or maybe you ask them to help with a specific aspect of the VISTA project. This really actively gets them involved and further connects them to what you are doing and also helps the member integrate with them as well. So since you probably have some experience with this, I'm going to ask you to respond to this chat question that you see on the screen now. In what ways have you or has your VISTA project worked to integrate your members into your organization? You can go ahead and type your responses in the chat. We'll have time to read a couple off out loud. And I will mention, if you are new to your role or if you don't know the answer, that's perfectly okay. You can respond with what ways you plan to integrate your members or would like to. I do ask that you be specific in your response because these answers don't just help me and my team, they really help everyone on this session think of other ways that you can integrate your members, such as having a group lunch with every new staff member, inviting your member to that. That's wonderful. Having your members attend weekly staff meetings and asking staff to meet with them. Allowing the member to go through an orientation at the site and touring the organization. That's wonderful, so they can really physically or perhaps virtually see how the organization is structured. Inviting them to board members, hosting a book club, scheduling meetings with staff from each program. A lot of people talking about organizing meetings, one-on-one meetings or group meetings, really finding ways to make sure the member is involved and asking the member what would be the most helpful for you to integrate you into the organization. Giving them swag, gear, putting them on a campus-wide committee, great way to really connect them with small groups of people, whether they're focus groups or committees and teams based on specific topics. There's a lot of great responses coming in. Walking through the neighborhoods we serve, attending staff meetings. Keep these coming because the more responses you see, the great. And if you see a response that you think you could integrate, keep in mind that some of these you could do in person or virtually. You could do a virtual tour or invite members to staff meetings that are virtual if you're not physically on site. These are great comments, so thank you very much for participating in this. And as you update the communication to your applicants before they start service, think about some of these comments that are coming in the chat. Because as you as the supervisor also work on your on-site orientation and training, you'll want to try to build in things like this, factoring in building in meetings or a tour or a matching up mentors, etc. You want to make sure that you're consistent in your process of integration for all of your members. Certainly you can tailor it a little bit based on your members' needs, but it helps to have some consistency and foundation of a plan so that you can be consistent with all your members and help them all integrate to the organization equally and effectively. We want to segue into looking at the process of helping your member integrate with the organization in the sense that it does not always have to be extremely formal, structured, or planned. Certainly, we do recommend somewhat of a plan, just like your on-site orientation and training has a plan which you can adapt to and adjust. But think about it. Some of the best networking can occur over a meal. Many of you talked about having the member go out to lunch. Some of you talked about virtual lunch groups, eating and talking to get to know each other. But also some organizations have an informal group of people who may go for a walk or exercise in the morning. That's another great way to integrate the member with people who may have a similar interest, or they may be delighted to have another person join them. Earlier, we discussed that you should never underestimate the power of one-on-one conversations. And again, those can be in person or virtual, but enabling and encouraging the member to make a couple of one-on-one connections that they plan in advance, or it could be impromptu. You as the supervisor will want to facilitate the setting up of some of these conversations and encourage and empower the member to arrange some others. One question that comes to mind is, does your organization have any type of fun team events? Maybe it's a holiday party, a team decathlon, annual trivia game, etc. These events, again, whether in person or virtual, can be great ways to let your member have a little fun, be informal, but also get to know team members and then slowly build connections as to how the work can be done together. And then the final comment we want to mention on the slide is perhaps you or other VISTA staff periodically gather outside of work hours. It could be for additional team bonding, maybe staff do a monthly virtual potluck at home, or some people may have a theme night or game night. If and when it's appropriate, consider asking your member if they want to join you. Again, it's outside of work, but it's a fun way to still connect with other people. And then when it comes to mentoring, I know a few people mentioned the idea of mentoring and allowing someone in the organization to shepherd them through the process of integration with staff members. Explore this possibility or find someone in the organization who might be able to mentor the members. I'll quickly say you may want to try to find at least one staff member who has or may soon have a vested interest in getting to know the member and the VISTA project. Next, I would say do your best to attempt to match personalities, personal or professional goals, or skills that each person has. You don't have to go through a lot of work to do this. We're not expecting you to spend 40 hours a week to do this. But with all the connections you have in the organization, it's great for you to say to the member, oh, you should meet this person because they'd be a really good person to help connect you to this part of the organization. Next, offer a suggestion that they start meeting weekly with their mentor for about 30 minutes, perhaps. That at least gets them used to consistency and regularity, but certainly they can adjust as needed. The most important thing is that they work together to decide what they want to talk about and how they can be effective at working together in a partnership. And although they would have this mentor, encourage the mentor to introduce the member to other staff, friends, and networks. You really want the mentoring relationships to help expand the member's knowledge, reach, and connections. And then I would also suggest that they try to learn about other parts of the organization. Certainly they're really focused on the VISTA project and that's their primary exclusive responsibility. But if they have a chance to even briefly get to know other aspects of the organization, whether they're related to their VISTA assignment or not, it really helps them, again, put this bigger picture together of how they fit into the organization and the ultimate work that everyone is striving towards. Other opportunities include incorporating your member into events that occur at or are sponsored by the organization. Those could be education and training events that might be for the purposes of acquiring new skills and knowledge. They might be on things like effective communication or planning productive meetings. They could be professional development events that focus on individual growth and teamwork. These might be things on mastering Microsoft Excel or understanding project management. You may want to connect them to fundraising events that bring people together around the same cause and really promote the organization's mission, especially if the member is doing anything with grants or fundraising as part of their assignment. This enables the member to meet funders and people who are passionate about the organization's mission. Team bonding events aimed at helping people get to know each other and really form partnerships and groups. This could be an annual team contest around Peeps. I know a lot of people like the marshmallow Peeps. It could be an indoor mini golf tournament or team trivia, anything that's fun and engaging. And speaking of fun and engaging, having those events at the organization, they may not necessarily be related to work tasks, but they help to motivate, inspire, and uplift staff. For example, at AmeriCorps headquarters, I started a random but fun celebration of Pi Day, and now it's one of the largest celebrations and everyone is invited. So let's go over a couple of very quick recommendations and resources. We all think about success. So the first thing is think. As you discussed in your breakout groups, think about how you can give more thought on your own and with your organization staff to help your member get more integrated. Next is collaborate. Talk with other organization staff and volunteers to hear their story. Find out how they got integrated and what they thought was most successful for them that can help your member. Third is plan. Again, it doesn't have to be super formal or super detailed, but at least start putting your thoughts into some type of structure, just like your on-site orientation and training, to factor in developing relationships and all the things that you can do. And I would recommend don't plan to have it all happen in the first week. There's a lot that happens in the first week, so spread it out over time. Fourth is communicate, and that's specifically communicating with your applicant and your member, whether via email, phone, or in person, about your plan to integrate them. Get their feedback, get their ideas, but find ways to also incorporate their interests and skills into your integration plan. And last, but certainly not least, smile, have fun, enjoy. You're bringing on a new member into your organization. Help them feel delighted and invigorated in this process. A quick reminder, a great and critical time to integrate your members into your organization is during the first couple weeks of service. So definitely go to the VISTA campus catalog, click on the learning path titled Member Orientation and Training, subscribe to and join the training, and you can learn a lot more about your role as a supervisor and a sponsor in providing the on-site orientation and training and other things to help your members get integrated into the organization. As you know, this is the main page of the VISTA Connect part of the VISTA campus. We love seeing people comment and share resources and ask questions. A couple of people have done so already. So please take advantage of this. This is not for us, this is for all of you. A lot of the great ideas you shared earlier today in the pre-session chat, even during the session about ways to integrate your members. So many different topics coming up, so many different topics that you can start and be part of. There's already over 1,200 current individuals specifically in the supervisor portion of VISTA Connect. So you can be part of a great community. So we encourage you as much as you can to share frequently and share often your ideas, thoughts, and questions. We covered a lot in a very short period of time today. We talked about what we mean by integration. We talked about the importance of connecting members to human and physical resources. We gave a little bit of detail about how you can get started on this journey. We let you get into small groups to discuss further details, and then provided you a couple of quick recommendations and resources. So before we let you go, we will ask you to complete a session evaluation. We know how important these sessions are for all of you, and we try to incorporate ideas and topics that are of interest and necessary to you. So please, either now or shortly after the session, complete this short evaluation with your feedback and recommendations. It's truly, truly appreciated. Next month, we're having a very open session called Supervisor Q&A, AmeriCorps Member Supervision, on Tuesday, October 12th, right after the holiday. Same time, 2 p.m. Eastern. And this target audience, again, is direct member supervisors, and it's focused on a few structured questions and then general questions that people have specifically about aspects of supervising members. So please log into the VISTA campus. You'll see on the next slide the reminder as to how to access the registration link. You log into the VISTA campus, click on the catalog button, you'll see the calendar. It's all there for you. So with that, I will remind you, if you do have any questions, you can type them in the chat. I apologize, we don't have time to answer them verbally, but I will try to answer any that come via email. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that the small groups and the large group were a huge success and a good step in the right direction. Thank you to all of the people that were involved in this session. Have a great day. Go forth and carry on. Thank you.